I trained warlords, monsters, apex killers across 11 systems, but a human girl knocked me unconscious in 5 minutes. Look, I need you to understand something right from the start. My name is Vector, Senior Combat Instructor at the Galactic Defense Academy, and I have seen it all. 47 years, people, 47 rotations of teaching the best, the brightest, and occasionally the breathtakingly stupid how to not die in combat. I have trained Krellian shock troopers who could punch through titanium plating. I have molded Zenthari infiltrators who moved like shadows made of silk and murder. I have even, and this still gives me nightmares, successfully taught a blobbarian how to hold a plasma rifle without absorbing it into their gelatinous mass. The point is, I know what I am doing. The Galactic Defense Academy is not some weekend warrior training camp where anyone with 3 appendages and a dream can show up. No. This is the institution that has produced 73% of the Confederation's decorated combat officers. We have standards here. We have protocols. We have a reputation that spans 12 star systems and makes recruiting officers weep with joy when they see our graduates. And me? Well, I am the reason half those standards exist in the first place. My exoskeleton, a beautiful architectural marvel of Draxon Prime evolution, has exactly 273 medals embedded in it. Each one represents a campaign, a battle, a moment where I stared death in its weird multi-dimensional face and said, "Not today, thanks." My forearms are not just for show, they are precision instruments honed by decades of combat experience. My compound eyes can track 17 different targets simultaneously. My reflexes operate at speeds that would make most species think time itself had stuttered. So when the new batch of recruits walked into my combat theory classroom on the first day of 3rd rotation, I did what I always do. I sized them up with the cold, calculating efficiency of someone who has forgotten more about warfare than most species will ever learn. 17 fresh faces. Well, face equivalents. The Metherian in the back did not really have a face so much as a collection of sensory nodes that pulsed with bioluminescence, but you get the idea. I saw the usual suspects. 2 Krellians, already flexing their ridiculous musculature like anyone was impressed. A Zenthari who thought sitting in the shadows made her look mysterious instead of just difficult to take attendance on. 3 Voxel from the merchant fleets, probably here because their families paid for the privilege. A handful of others, various species, various skill levels, all about to learn that combat theory is not nearly as fun as they thought it would be. And then there was the human. She sat in the middle row, boots up on the desk like she owned the place, wearing that ridiculous Earth military jacket, with patches I did not recognize. Her hair, an impractical length by any military standard, was pulled back in what humans call a ponytail. She was chewing something, moving her jaw in that repetitive motion that her species apparently finds soothing, but that registers to everyone else as low-level aggression. Maya Torres. According to my datapad, Lieutenant, Earth Defense Forces. Transfer student from their Sol System Military Academy. I had read the file, of course. Humans had only joined the Confederation 8 months ago. Their planet, Earth, was classified as a Class 12 death world, which basically meant it was a nightmare sphere of suffering, where everything was trying to kill everything else, and somehow, these bizarre primates had climbed to the top of the food chain through sheer stubborn refusal to die properly. The file said she had combat experience. The file said she had commendations. The file said a lot of things that files always say about students whose governments want them to look impressive. I was not impressed. Maya Torres looked up when I started the lesson, and I swear on every ancestor's Katan, she had the audacity to smile at me. Not a respectful smile, not a nervous smile. No, this was the smile of someone who thought they already knew everything I was about to teach. Oh, how I despised that smile. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Theory," I began, my voice carrying the weight of authority that comes from nearly 5 decades of breaking cocky recruits down into functional soldiers. "I am Senior Instructor Vector. You will address me as Sir. You will follow protocols. You will learn, or you will wash out. Those are your options." The Krellians sat up straighter. The Zenthari stopped trying to look mysterious. The Voxel actually started taking notes. The human kept chewing whatever was in her mouth, that smile still playing at the corners of her lips. I continued with my standard opening lecture. The one about combat efficiency, threat assessment, and the mathematics of survival. My forearms moved through holographic displays showing battle formations, tactical advantages, and the cold, hard statistics of warfare. This was the part where most recruits realized they were in over their heads. Maya Torres yawned. Actually yawned. The Metherian next to her, a cautious fellow named Prillik, physically shifted his entire bulk away from her, like her casual disrespect might be contagious. The two Krellians exchanged glances that clearly said, "Is she serious right now?" Even the Zentheri looked scandalized, and her species literally assassinates people for a living. I stopped mid-sentence. "Lieutenant Torres, am I boring you?" She had the decency to take her boots off the desk at least. "No, sir. Just tired. Long shuttle ride from Earth." "How unfortunate," I said, letting sarcasm drip from every syllable. "Perhaps you would prefer to return to your death world and nap while the rest of us discuss actual military theory." That got a reaction from the class. A few nervous laughs. The Krellians grinned, happy to see someone else getting the verbal treatment. But Maya, she just shrugged. "I am good, sir. Please, continue." Oh, I would continue, all right. I pulled up the specific module I saved for occasions exactly like this. The one about Death World species and their unfortunate tendency toward self-delusion. Class, let us discuss a fascinating phenomenon in xenopsychology. Species from high gravity, high danger worlds often develop what we call survival bias. They believe, incorrectly, that because their planet tried to kill them every day, they are somehow more capable than species who evolved with intelligence and efficiency. I looked directly at Maya. She looked directly back, that infuriating smile still present. These species, I continued, warming to my theme, think that pain tolerance is the same as combat skill. They think that brute endurance compensates for tactical superiority. They think that because they survived their terrible planetary conditions, they are, and I quote from actual human military documentation here, special. The word special came out dripping with contempt. A few students glanced at Maya, waiting for her reaction. The Metherian had moved so far away from her that he was practically sitting on top of the Zentheri, who looked ready to stab him on principle. Maya raised her hand. "Yes, Lieutenant Torres," I said, already regretting acknowledging her. "Just a question, sir. Have you ever fought a Death World species in actual combat, like outside of simulations?" The classroom went silent. You could have heard a Zentheri breathe, and they barely breathe at all. I felt my exoskeleton bristle. "I have fought in 47 campaigns across 11 systems. Lieutenant, I have faced every major species in the Confederation in combat scenarios. My experience is beyond question." Right, she said, nodding like she was actually considering my credentials. "But that was not really my question, sir. Have you fought a human? Specifically?" "I have not had the displeasure," I said coldly. "Your species joined the Confederation 8 months ago. Before that, you were busy hitting each other with sticks on your nightmare planet." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Fair enough, sir," she said, still smiling that smile. "Just checking." I decided right then that before this rotation was over, I was going to teach Maya Torres exactly where she ranked in the galactic hierarchy of combat effectiveness. Somewhere very, very low. The lecture continued for another 20 minutes, during which I outlined the fundamental principles of combat that had been tested and proven across countless battlefields. Proper stance, energy conservation, tactical positioning, all the things that separated trained soldiers from enthusiastic corpses. Maya Torres took exactly 0 notes. When I finally opened the floor for questions, her hand shot up immediately. "Yes, Lieutenant," I said, already exhausted by her presence. "Sir, I learn better by doing than by listening," she said, standing up in a smooth motion that suggested decent physical fitness, for a human anyway. "Would it be possible to get a practical demonstration, maybe a sparring session, so we can see these principles in action?" The classroom erupted in whispers. The Krellians looked excited. The Voxel looked terrified. Prillik the Metherian made a sound that his species makes when they think someone is about to die. I felt a grin spread across my mandibles. Oh, this was perfect. This was exactly the kind of teaching opportunity that only comes along a few times per rotation. Every year there was always one student who thought they were special, who needed a practical lesson in humility. Usually I had my teaching assistant Kilrath handle these situations. But this I wanted to do personally. A practical demonstration, I repeated slowly, savoring each word. You want me, a decorated combat veteran with 47 years of experience, to spar with you, a lieutenant who has been in space for approximately what, 3 weeks? 4 weeks, sir, she corrected. But yes, that is exactly what I am requesting. Unless protocols do not allow it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Challenging my authority while giving me a perfect out if I wanted to decline. But declining would make me look afraid, and I was many things, but afraid of a human who probably weighed 60 kilograms soaking wet was not one of them. Protocols absolutely allow it, I said, my forearms spreading wide. In fact, protocols encourage practical demonstrations when students require additional clarity. Class, we are moving to Combat Ring 3. You are about to witness a very educational example of why theory matters more than bravado. The students scrambled to gather their equipment. The Krellians were already placing bets. I could see the credit chips changing hands. The Zenthari looked genuinely interested for the first time all day. Even the Voxel, despite their obvious nervousness, seemed eager to watch what they clearly assumed would be a very short fight. Combat Ring 3 was standard Academy issue. 40 meters in diameter, reinforced energy barriers rated to contain anything short of a plasma detonation, shock-absorbent flooring, and full medical monitoring systems built into the walls. The safety protocols were extensive because, well, combat training at this level could get messy. Kilrath, my teaching assistant, met us there. His environmental suit hissed slightly as he moved, the methane atmosphere inside keeping him comfortable. Sir, he said through his translator, is this wise? The human is new. What if she gets injured? Then she will learn a valuable lesson about overconfidence, I said, stepping into the ring. Set the safeties to training level 4. No permanent damage, but enough feedback to make the point clear. Maya was already stretching on the other side of the ring, rolling her shoulders and neck in that loose, casual way that suggested she had done this before. She had removed her jacket, revealing a simple black training shirt underneath. Her arms, I noticed with mild surprise, showed considerable muscle definition for her size, still not impressive by galactic standards, but not completely pathetic either. The other students arranged themselves around the ring's perimeter, their faces showing various degrees of anticipation and morbid curiosity. The Krellians were openly laughing. Perlik had his sensory nodes covered, like he could not bear to watch. I activated my combat stance, all 4 arms positioned in the classical Draxan defensive formation. 47 years of muscle memory and training settled into place like an old, comfortable weapon. Maya bounced on her feet a few times, shook out her hands and raised her fists in some primitive earth-fighting stance. Ready when you are, sir, she said, that smile never leaving her face. Kilrath activated the combat timer. Sparring match begins in 3, 2, 1, engage. I decided to end this quickly and mercifully. That was my first mistake. I opened with a textbook combination. Left primary arm feinting high, right primary sweeping low, secondary arms positioned for counter-grappling. It was a standard opening move, the kind I had used successfully against opponents twice. Maya's size and 3 times her apparent skill level. She moved. Not the way she was supposed to move, mind you. According to every combat manual in existence, when faced with a 4-armed opponent executing a high-low split attack, you either retreat to reassess or commit to blocking the more dangerous strike. These are your options. These have always been your options. Maya apparently had not read those manuals. She dropped into a crouch so low that her rear knee almost touched the ground, letting my high feint pass completely over her head. Then she pivoted on her front foot and slipped past my low sweep with a margin of maybe 2 centimeters. Before I could adjust, she was inside my guard, which should have been impossible, and her fist snapped out toward my thorax. I blocked it easily with my secondary right arm. Of course, I had been fighting for longer than she had been alive, but the impact surprised me. Not painful, the training safeties prevented that, but there was force behind that punch. Real force, the kind that suggested actual training, not just death world flailing. Interesting, I said, resetting my stance. You have some skill. Let us see how you handle a real attack. I accelerated, using the full speed my species was known for. My arms became a blur of controlled strikes, each one precisely calibrated to test her defenses without causing serious injury. I was still teaching after all, not trying to actually hurt the overconfident human, and she kept moving wrong. Every principle of efficient combat that I knew, and I knew them all, said that she should be overwhelmed. 4 arms versus 2 is not a fair fight. The mathematics alone made it impossible. She should have been blocking desperately, backing up, looking for an opening to concede. Instead, Maya Torres flowed around my strikes like water. No, not like water. Water was too gentle a comparison. She moved like something that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning that getting hit meant death. Her head bobbed and weaved with movements that looked almost spastic, completely unpredictable. Her torso twisted at angles that seemed anatomically uncomfortable. She ducked under strikes that should have tagged her, slipped past grapples that should have caught her, and she was laughing. Actually laughing. Like this was fun. "You telegraph your combinations, sir," she said between breaths. Her voice not even winded. "Left primary always leads when you are going for a grapple." The audacity of this human, offering me tactical advice while I was clearly dominating the fight, would have been funny if it was not so infuriating. I shifted strategies, moving from testing strikes to a proper combat sequence. I used the Draxon Cascade, a 7-strike combination that had won me 3 interspecies tournaments. It was fast, it was efficient, and it had never failed to put an opponent on the defensive. Maya blocked the first strike with her forearm, absorbed the second with her shoulder, somehow contorted under the third, and then did something that made my brain briefly stop processing information. She stepped into the 4th strike. Not away from it. Into it. Accepting the impact on her upper arm while simultaneously closing the distance between us, and suddenly her elbow was driving up toward my mandible with shocking speed. I jerked my head back purely on instinct and her elbow missed by a fraction, but I felt the air displacement. I felt how close that had been. The students around the ring had gone quiet. "What are you doing?" I demanded, genuinely confused now. "You are taking hits you could avoid. That is tactically nonsensical." She grinned, and there was something in that expression that made my exoskeleton prickle with an emotion I had not felt in a very long time. "Trading damage for position, sir. You can tank more than me, sure, but you are not used to people who do not care about getting hit." "That is because it is stupid," I said, circling now, reassessing. "Pain is a signal to avoid damage." "Pain is just information," she replied, matching my circle. "And I have a pretty high tolerance for information." She attacked then, and it was nothing like the combat forms I had seen in the galactic database. It was aggressive, wild, and completely unpredictable. Her fists came in at weird angles. She used her knees, her elbows, even her forehead in one particularly alarming moment. She fought like someone who had learned combat in an environment where there were no rules, no protocols, no safe stopping points. She fought like someone from a death world. I was still winning, my superior reach and additional limbs giving me the advantage. I was landing more strikes. The combat computer agreed, showing my point total climbing steadily. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice asked a question I did not want to answer. If I was winning, why did I feel like I was losing control? The fight had been going for 3 minutes and 40 seconds when Maya stopped smiling. I noticed the change immediately, because I had been tracking every aspect of her performance, cataloging her mistakes, her inefficiencies, all the evidence I would use later to explain exactly why Death World confidence was not the same as actual combat capability. Her expression shifted from amused to something else entirely. Something focused. Something that made my compound eyes widen slightly because I had seen that look before on the faces of soldiers who had decided that survival was no longer negotiable. "Okay," she said quietly, almost to herself, "let us try this for real." Before I could process what that meant, she changed. Not physically, obviously, but everything about her movement pattern shifted. The playful dodging stopped. The testing jabs stopped. What replaced them was something that my 47 years of experience struggled to categorize. She came at me like a biological missile. I threw a combination that had stopped a Krellian charge cold last rotation. She walked through it, just accepted the hits on her arms, her shoulders, her ribs, and kept coming forward. The impact feedback registered on my arms. I knew I was landing solid strikes, but she did not slow down. Stop taking unnecessary damage, I shouted, because this was insane. This violated every principle of combat efficiency. Her response was to duck under my primary arms and drive her fist into my thorax plate with enough force that the training safeties screamed a warning. I staggered back, genuinely surprised. That had hurt. Not seriously. The safeties prevented that, but I had felt it through my exoskeleton plating. How are you generating that much power? I demanded. Your mass, your leverage, the physics do not support this. Rotation of the hips, sir, she said, pressing forward. Ground force transfer, kinetic chains. We invented like 6 different martial arts on Earth that all figured out the same basic principle. Use the whole body, not just the arm. She demonstrated by pivoting on her rear foot and throwing another punch that I barely blocked with 2 arms. The impact sent vibrations through my secondary skeletal structure. Around the ring, the students were not laughing anymore. The Krellians had stopped placing bets. Perlik had uncovered his sensory nodes to watch. Even Kulirith had moved closer to the barrier, his translator picking up his shocked wheezing. I tried the Draxon spiral, a defensive form that created a rotating barrier with all 4 arms, impossible to penetrate without taking catastrophic damage from the counterstrikes. Maya studied it for exactly 2 seconds, then stepped in anyway. She took a hit on her forearm that should have numbed her entire arm. She absorbed a strike to her ribs that should have driven the air from her lungs. She accepted a glancing blow to her temple that should have disoriented her, and she got inside my guard again. Her elbow found my joint housing. Her knee drove up toward my lower thorax. Her other hand grabbed one of my secondary arms and twisted with a joint lock that I did not even know humans understood. I threw her off, using superior strength and mass, and she hit the mat, rolled, and was back on her feet in less than a second. She was breathing harder now. I could see the impact starting to show, her skin already beginning to discolor where my strikes had landed. By all reasonable combat assessment, she should be slowing down. Pain should be affecting her performance. Damage accumulation should be degrading her capability. She moved faster. Your species is malfunctioning, I said, falling back on textbook defensive positions. You should be weakening. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, sir, she replied. And I did not know what adrenaline was, but I was beginning to suspect it was deeply unfair. I decided to end this. No more teaching, no more holding back to avoid injury. I would use my full speed and put her down with the clinical efficiency that had won me 73 medals. I attacked with everything I had, and Maya Torres met me in the middle. What happened next was chaos. 4 arms versus 2 should not have been competitive. Mathematics said so. Physics said so. Every combat instructor in the galaxy said so. But she fought like mathematics was a suggestion, and physics was something that happened to other people. She slipped a strike by millimeters and countered. I blocked and threw 3 more. She took 1 hit, avoided 2, and drove her fist into the same thorax plate she had hit before. The training safeties shrieked again. I tried a grab. She escaped using flexibility that bordered on disturbing, and suddenly her leg was sweeping mine. I stumbled. Senior combat instructor Victor, veteran of 47 campaigns, stumbled. The students gasped. And that was when Maya Torres planted her rear foot, rotated her entire body like a coiled spring releasing, and threw a straight right hand that had every kilogram of her body weight, every joule of her leg drive, and every bit of her Death World evolution behind it. It hit my mandible. The training safeties failed. Not completely. They prevented lethal damage, prevented permanent injury, but they were designed for normal species with normal pain tolerances throwing normal punches with normal force. This was not normal. The impact snapped my head to the side. I felt something crack in my exoskeleton plating. My vision went double, then triple. My legs forgot how standing worked. The combat ring's floor rushed up to meet me, and I had the distant, dreamy thought that floors should not move that fast. I hit the mat. I did not get up. I woke up in Medical Bay 7 with a headache that felt like a plasma grenade had detonated inside my skull and the distinct sensation that my entire understanding of the universe had been personally insulted. The medical technician, a kind Valorian named Surish, informed me that I had a fractured mandible plate, 2 cracked ribs in my secondary skeletal structure, and what humans apparently call a concussion. The technician seemed deeply uncomfortable delivering this news, probably because instructors were not supposed to end up in medical bays after sparring with students. Kilrath visited an hour later, his environmental suit hissing nervously. "Sir," he said carefully, "the Academy director wants to see the combat footage. Also, Lieutenant Torres asked if you were okay." She seemed genuinely concerned. "How considerate of her," I muttered, each word sending fresh spikes of pain through my healing mandible. "Show me the footage." We watched it on the medical bay's hollowed display. Kilrath stood beside me in silence as the recording played through the entire 5-minute and 12-second fight. Watching it from outside was different than experiencing it. I could see now what I had missed in the moment. Maya had been holding back for the first 3.5 minutes, testing me, learning my patterns. When she shifted gears, it was not desperation or luck. It was tactical assessment followed by devastating execution. "Pause there," I said, pointing at the moment she walked through my Draxon cascade. "Run the biometric data." The display showed her vital signs during that exchange. Heart rate elevated but controlled. Oxygen consumption high but sustainable. And her pain receptor feedback, because the combat ring monitored both participants, showed that she was absolutely feeling every hit she took. She just did not care. "This is not normal," Kilrath whispered. "Sir, her species, they evolved on a planet where their own immune systems attack them regularly, where their star bathes them in radiation, where their atmosphere has oxygen concentrations that would be toxic to most species. They developed persistence hunting, chasing prey until it died of exhaustion. They healed from injuries that would kill others. They adapted to every environmental extreme their nightmare world threw at them." "I know what death worlds are," I said quietly. "With respect, sir, I do not think you did. I do not think any of us did. We read it in files, saw it as statistics, but we did not understand what it meant." Kilrath gestured at the frozen image of Maya's final punch. "It means they do not stop. It means pain is just data. It means they fight like the entire universe is trying to kill them, because on their planet it was." The Academy director, Commander Heslon, visited the next day. Her crystalline form refracted the medical bay lights into rainbow patterns as she stood beside my bed. "Instructor Vector," she said in her melodic voice, "we are implementing new protocols for human students. They will be classified as specialist combatants. Their training will be adjusted accordingly." "Good," I managed. "Also," she continued, and I swear there was amusement in her tone, "Lieutenant Torres has requested you as her primary instructor for advanced combat courses. She said, and I quote, that you are the first teacher who actually challenged her." I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the academy, a human was probably smiling that infuriating smile. And I had 47 years of experience that apparently meant nothing when faced with a species that evolved fighting gravity, radiation, bacteria, predators, and each other simultaneously. I was not special. She was.